When you're looking for a co-founder to do your business development, remember that you can already do a lot of that business development, even if you're not a business person, to not outsource your sales. Welcome to Impact Sales Radio. I'm Julie. Join me in exploring how impact startups turn long-term visions into bootstrapped revenue. Let's be real for a second. You're a visionary impact founder. You have researched everything there is to know about the system you're looking to change. You aim to build a profitable business as well as an impactful business. But that feels far off right now when you don't know your value proposition yet. You're supposed to get out of that research mode and into sales mode. This is what every impact founder struggles with. That's what we'll explore together in Impact Sales Radio. What if I told you you can turn your research superpower into a sales strength so that you can get sales that are repeatable or building towards your strategy? That's called convertible research. It's a method I designed specifically for impact startups. Drop your email in the first link in the show notes and you'll see the big picture of what you need to do right now. Warning, no silver bullets will be provided. Thanks for joining us here and follow me down the rabbit hole. Let's go. Welcome to this episode of Impact Sales Radio. I'm Julie and let's get to it. In this episode, we'll go from vision to an actual sales system in order to uncover a value proposition. I want to discuss the case of a social well-being startup. I won't mention the name unless they show up in the sponsorship reel in a couple of seconds. No, I'm joking. I won't mention the name to protect the person's anonymity. Also to take a bit of creative liberty. So if you're listening, Alice, I'm not specifically talking about your business. I'm using it as a source of inspiration to draw analogies to other startups as well. As an impact founder, you are starting from a specific vision, right? I wonder how long this has been maturing in your head. Chances are it's been a while. Most founders I speak to are between a year and a half and a couple of years. Some have done 10 years of fundamental research on the topic. But what joins all of you together, dear impact founders, is that you're having a hard time going from that very deep domain expertise and that vision that is so clear in your head and so inspiring and so unique to turning that into a concrete idea that people can actually pay you for. That gap is quite large. And I haven't come across any methods that help you bridge that gap. So I've developed it. There's a very important starting point. I already mentioned it, your vision. Your vision is the most important starting point and is the thing you should never want to lose because it's the fuel for everything. It's the fertile ground. It's the thing that you want to get closer to as you progress. A vision is a big idea, right? It's a perspective, it's a point of view, it's a statement like I look outside and I see a world where, in my case, shiny innovations are lauded and growth is expected to be a shareholder growth less than a stakeholder growth. That to me is the world that I see. It's not a world that I really want to see, but I see investments going to cyber trucks rather than solving social inequality, and I'm just baffled by it. I believe that entrepreneurship is actually a vector for social innovation, for social complex challenges to be solved through new businesses. And I wonder what your vision is. If you have to fill in the blanks and say, look outside and I see a world that, can you ... Can you fill in that statement? You don't have to overthink it, just what comes true now. Look outside and I see a world that. If you then move to I believe in, to a more positive statement, a hopeful statement, what is that belief? You can be very concrete, you can be very vague. There's no wrong answer, there's only yours. That's one of the keys in entrepreneurship, right? There's no wrong answer, there's only yours. So don't try to perfect it, but take a moment to think about it. Look outside and I see a world, ... And then I believe in ... Now, if you think you don't have a starting point, and this is something I hear a lot with this, for example, with this startup that I mentioned. It's like, where do I start when everything feels equally important? Where do I start? You start with your vision. That's the most important thing. And everything else should always strengthen that vision, not dilute it. When you feel stuck with your idea, it's probably because you haven't made that vision land yet into something more concrete. Some startups at this point are hire branding agencies, marketing agencies, or development partners. While all of those have a place for some startups, usually those are not the right investments to make at that point. That assumes that you are completely correct about your solution, so it already leaves no room for error. And I've seen countless of founders that have invested 30K, 60K, whatever they had on wasteful activities, while I see founders who don't have the luxury of disposable income being much more resourceful, much more frugal, maximizing output with minimal funding, no family and friends really available, let alone fools. So they actually start to build something scrappy and crappy, right? They're first going to make sure that they have the customer funding lined up. How do you approach that? If you have a network, you can start to sell some things that you assume are valuable because they already know you. But that quickly enough dries up. In the end, you've done those projects, you've learned from it in some extent, but it's not really something you can repeat or scale. So let's explore that for a second. The second part of my method is system. You've tackled your vision. The second part is your system. The system you operate in and the system you operate by. You might feel as an impact founder at this stage where you're trying to create a solution and make it stick, that you need someone to help structure ideas, execute on them. You might be looking for a co-founder, but how do you know what co-founder you need if the solution isn't clear yet? Unless you have someone who's willing to figure that out together and is not to be put in a box of a specific kind of developer that will work towards that technology, you have to be able to work tech agnostically. So how can you do that? Same goes for a business profile. If they're stuck in a certain industry, they're going to want to hold tight to that industry. So if you're finding a co-founder, look for someone who's curious and really looking to learn about that industry together, about the system together. Now, the main question is, how do I find someone who really understands my vision and can help me without necessarily taking over? What level of execution can I afford as a startup with limited resources? And do I need a co-founder or just someone with specific expertise? Those are all valid questions at this point. But the answer oftentimes is not to be found into a traditional business coach or a bureaucratic business coach, like someone who, with all due respect, have never been in a situation of entrepreneurship before, never been close to a startup even, and start to give advice. You should do this, you should do that. No, whatever form of collaboration you choose for, you need to be able to focus on what you do best. What I think you do best is understanding your system and trying to solve problems within that system. I see that there might be a step that you can take yourself before you actually define what type of co-founder, what type of team you need. For me, that step is the system. You are curious about how to change the system. You are great at researching and analyzing. You've only come this far to create your vision by being curious about that, by researching how it could be. So it's only natural for you to have that strength. What if you use that strength in order to build the essentials of your business that you can actually build the rest on? So that you don't have to balance those budget constraints as much, but can maybe afford high quality expertise. Now, the first step you might be planning on now, and I would congratulate you on it, is market research. This is the case of the person I talked to today. They see the importance of understanding the target market. They want to refine their offering, so note that there's an assumed solution already, but they struggle to determine what the best approach is. So they're looking at, okay, I think that I need to launch a survey and I need to get that survey to as many people as possible. Now that's a great step. But if you don't know what your problem is that you're solving yet, then a survey isn't going to get you that information. The next action to take now might not be a survey. It might not be that. A survey might not give you the depth of insight. We learned that from design thinking, and that's a method that uses anthropology techniques and other methods to empathize with the target and try to understand what drives value for them, what problems they see, what their context is. Really understand that. And nowadays, we put too much emphasis on tying design thinking to problem validation, but actually there's a step before it that is often glanced over as something we're not going to do. That's empathy interviews. As a founder, you have no time for design thinking, let alone empathy interviews. You do have a priority of sales. You do have a priority of recurring revenue. So how might we marry those? That's the question I pose. So if you wonder, is there a real market for my idea, or am I just trying to project my passion onto others? Then you might want to see if you're asking the right questions to uncover what the people in those companies truly lead. So the question then, is a survey going to get you there? Get meaningful insights? And my stance on that is very clear. It's no. A survey is an evaluative experiment, as we would call it in the business design language. And this sounds very preposterous, but it's super simple. You have about 26 different types of experiments. Last time I made an experimentation course. An interview is a form of an experiment, a survey as well. An evaluative thing is where you basically ask a yes or no question, or the scope of your research is to evaluate whether something is good or bad. Opposite to that is a generative type of experiment. A generative type of experiment is where you try to generate insights, ideas, problems, challenges, empathy that you didn't have before. This is where your sales conversations come in. A discovery call should be the first step of your sales conversation. In this call, you get to ask them, what is the system? How does it work? Now, a next step in that, if you're, okay, let's do it. Let's do generative interviews. Cool. Let's do it in a way that will actually drive my sales. Then who are you going to interview? This particular client I spoke to was hesitating between 3 target audiences, but actually it was only 2, because one of them she could rule out with just the click of a button, basically. As soon as I asked her, who do you think this problem, without defining what the problem is that she's solving, but who do you think has the most challenges when it comes to psychosocial well-being? Who do you think has the most to gain? It was clear that it wasn't startups. Startup founders, like before you're a scale up, the biggest problem is actual business survival, but also mental well being survival. There's a huge problem there. Founder well being is a massively underrated thing. Hustle culture has been detrimental to that as well. I applaud founders who are able to work less and do actual better things. But in her space, in her perspective, something in her vision was linked to making a well-being policy, which starts with one employee, and it's mandatory then, and implementing that in order to be able to attract talent. And since scale-ups need to attract talent quicker and faster and bigger and have a war on talent going on, raging along, it was clear that the scale-ups were the ones that were going to have that. The SMEs are the third target group, but I haven't told her this yet. So, Alice, if you're listening, the SMEs are being served already. They have the budget to hire the companies that do the custom well-being implementations. The group that's being underserved are the scale-ups. And this is another thing you're looking for in the system. Where is there a lever I can pull to increase the impact? Scale-ups are notorious for being willing to rethink the way things work. They get the question from the people that they hire that are usually a bit younger as well. They get the question of what do you do for what's your well-being policy? So they're faced with these challenges much more, yet they don't have the budget to hire a big expensive consulting firm, even a boutique specialized consulting firm. So this part of the market, this scale-up part of the market is clearly the market that we are most curious about, that we assume will have a lot to say on this subject. Of course, we assume that there's awareness around well-being, but she's already validated that through conversations. So one of the things that I notice when I go through this vision system value method is that we need to do an internal round of validation with the founders before we actually go to the markets. And we can save so much time with that. Contrary to what design thinking and lean startup are trying to have us believe, we need to find all the answers in the market. But actually, when we're doing impact startup, we are driven by our desire and our purpose and our deep expertise. So actually, we hold a lot of the creative restrictions in which we want to operate. We own those. So it's a validation of what are our creative limitations that we want to set. And that will make our solution much more creative. It will mean that unlike others working on prevention, we will work, for example, on hiring. Unlike others working on SMEs, corporates, that's where the money is, we work on the ones that are broke and we try to really serve them well. But maybe we ask them a small subscription and maybe we just go for scale, right? We'll see. Solution will show itself in due time. So that will help solve the question of what does my ideal customer look like and what do they care about most? How do you bridge that gap though between vision and execution too? What are small, concrete steps that would actually contribute to that vision and to turning that into systemic value? The first step is always sales. It's always looking back at how you do it today, how you've done it in the past, and how you could do it in a different way tomorrow. It's always sales. Then we look at the vision, the system, and the value. We've already covered that. But there's a really big importance in taking small, concrete steps on the right things than trying to solve everything at once. In summary, when you're looking for a co-founder to do your business development, remember that you can already do a lot of that business development, even if you're not a business person, even if you're not a person who can make that concrete idea land. As a founder, to not outsource your sales. You can outsource the tasks, but not the interpretation of the needs. That is something at an early stage you want to keep close to the chest. At a scale-up stage, you can externalize that towards a product owner. You can delegate that to a product owner or a product manager, even after a while when you have different products and services. But the interpretation of your vision towards linking that towards the actual problem you observe with the people that you empathize with, linking those together into a value proposition is not something you want to outsource, because first of all, you'll have a not invented here type of syndrome. And second of all, I met Katrien yesterday, who after a year and a half came back to me saying, okay, so I guess we won't focus on the legal obligation value proposition, which is exactly what I told her a year and a half ago. But obviously, it's not my role to tell anyone what. I'm not an oracle. I might as well have been wrong. I probably said 10 things that were completely off the mark. So no one that's going to tell you something, you're not going to have internalized that. You're not going to believe that necessarily. Maybe you won't even give it importance. They probably also won't, because who are they to tell you? Who am I to tell her that regulatory is not a good trigger to work on? That's a common belief, but there's plenty of startups that could prove that wrong. Also, it's not about being right or wrong. It's about learning about your market the quickest you can. Who else is going to be able to do that in the most direct line than you? So think about it. When is the last time you learned something about your market? When is the last time you intentionally designed your operating system to learn about your market? How could you change your sales process? How could you change your networking interactions in order to learn more about your target market? Sometimes the most important thing is not having the answers, it's knowing the right questions to ask. With that, I wish you fun in exploring how you will get to your systemic impacts. Bye!